So, we've all heard the famous words of advice from Albert Einstein. The world's problems will not be solved by the same people who created them. In other words, we will not evolve past our current state of crisis by using the same thinking that created the situation. Today, I'd like to share some thoughts not by Einstein, but by a man named Eisenstein, who has been working to change our ways of thinking about economics and the myth of scarcity. Charles Eisenstein discusses the idea of a gift economy or a gift culture, which is a mode of exchange where valuables are not traded or sold, but rather given without an explicit agreement for immediate or future rewards. Sounds kind of un-American, doesn't it? Well, for a nation built on exploitation, manifest destiny, doctrine of discovery, and the unbridled accumulation of wealth, I guess it is. Eisenstein's primary goal is the reestablishment of some form of gift economy as a means of strengthening relationships, in a contrast to money economies, which commodify our relationships and render people interchangeable. Just another cog in the wheel of our consumer-driven culture. He asserts that money is created by the conversion of free human interactions into paid services. Eisenstein himself attempts to practice the gift economy in his own life. His events are held voluntarily, organized by others who invite him to speak. In accordance with his ideal of generosity and living in the gift, he generally charges people expenses, but no fee, leaving it up to them to give him something if they want to. In his book, Sacred Economics, Eisenstein explores economic proposals, including a personal emphasis on right livelihood. Buddhists will recognize that phrase. Right livelihood over financial motivation. The idea of right livelihood is an ancient one. It embodies the principle that each person should follow an honest occupation which fully respects other people, animals, and the natural world. It means being responsible for the consequences of our actions and taking only our fair share of the Earth's resources. In other writings, he has also advocated for universal basic income. He explains and rejects what he describes as the myth of scarcity, which fosters greed and anxiety. Remember the toilet paper crisis at the beginning of the pandemic? Was it actually a shortage or just a fear of a possible shortage? And we know here in the US, 40% of our food ends up in the trash. And most of what is purchased at Walmart ends up in a landfill within 5 years. We are the most wasteful nation in the world, having only 5% of the world's population, but using 30% of the world's resources. According to the Brookings Institute, American households held over $98 trillion of wealth in 2018. If that amount were divided evenly across the US population, it would result in over $343,000 for each person. For a family of 3, that's over $1 million in assets. Worldwide, if all the wealth were distributed equally, each human being on this planet would be worth $34,000. In our falsely inflated, that may not sound like much to some, but it would be a literal fortune to most of the world's citizens. There is no one on this planet that can justify the worth of Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame. He had a net worth in 24 of over $216 billion, making him the second richest person on the planet. In 2023 alone, his net worth increased by $70 billion. This means he earned around $191 million a day, or an incredible $8 million an hour. Now, we know Jeff is not a lazy guy, but has he worked hard enough to earn that fortune? Or has he benefited from the backbreaking, underpaid, minimum wage earning employees that are seen as disposable if they should ask for more. Are his employees lazy because they cannot pay their bills on what our lawmakers have decided is an acceptable but not livable minimum wage? There are many reasons folks behave in ways that might at first glance seem like laziness. But when we call someone lazy, we condemn that human being. Explains Mel Levine in his book, The Myth of Laziness. What appears to be lazy can actually be fear of failure, fear of success, desire for nurture, fear of expectations, passive-aggressive communication, depression, learned helplessness, lack of equal education, illness, or simply the need for downtime. Many of us erroneously assume that we should always be going full steam and chastise ourselves for being lazy when our body and mind shut down in protest. Our culture puts a premium on productivity and hard work. The reality is that everyone needs time to relax and regenerate for both our physical and emotional health. Our collective tendency toward compulsive overwork is a product of something Dr. Devon Price calls the laziness lie, from their new book, Laziness Does Not Exist. The laziness lie is a belief system rooted in the Protestant work ethic and the legacy of chattel slavery, and it was designed to keep people forever toiling without complaint. The laziness lie has three major components. Your productivity is your worth. You can't trust your own feelings and needs, and there is always more you could be doing. Dr. Price concludes that doing too much has destroyed our health, our economy, our environment, our relationships, and our spirits. And then Dr. Price poses this challenge. Why not try doing less? At the very least, it will give us some much needed space to grieve all that's been taken from us while we've been toiling so hard for the billionaires to reap the financial reward. But let's get back to economic proposals of a universal basic income. Some welfare systems can be regarded as steps on the way to basic income, but because they have conditions attached, they are not basic incomes. Universal basic income, also called the basic living stipend or guaranteed annual income, is a theoretical governmental program for a period payment delivered to all citizens of a given population without a means test or work requirement. You might remember back in 2020, Andrew Yang traveled the country as the presidential candidate, trying to convince voters that a crisis was coming. The economy was going to evolve, he warned, jobs would be automated away in droves, and many Americans were going to find themselves at home without a paycheck. And then, with the pandemic, we were all sent home at once. Mr. Yang spent months insisting the federal government provide American adults with universal basic income of $1,000 a month. But the global pandemic had arrived, and the fallout from the outbreak, which we are still experiencing, had plunged the country into grim and uncertain reality. So only then, with millions of not so lazy, hardworking people out of work, and wondering how they would pay the bills, had proposals similar to Mr. Yang's gained wide bipartisan approval. In the sort of political turnabout that may only be possible when society faces dire need, giving free money to Americans suddenly appeared not only rational, but critically necessary to many Democrats and key Republicans. In countries where citizens are actually valued, such as Finland, Denmark, Norway, Iceland, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, New Zealand, and Canada, the government has made sure that their citizens have a financial safety net. And by the way, they are all democratic, socialist nations. Thank you. Say it with me. We live in amazing times. We understand more about the world than ever. We have a powerful computer in our pocket and artificial intelligence tools that analyze data for us. All of this at the consumer's fingertips. The internet is connecting all of the top minds of the planet. Automation makes our lives easier every day. Violent crime rates are going down, and there are fewer wars than ever in history, believe it or not. We live in a world of information and connectivity, and yet we are so paralyzed with fear, we can't see the solutions to the world's biggest problems are in our hands, one of which is economic inequality. A human being in survival mode only cares about the immediate future, the job they're about to lose, the stability of the economy, natural disasters. Larger problems, even those that could cause our species extinction, doesn't seem to matter to the person afraid of not being able to pay the bills. And so we focus on immediate solutions to immediate threats. We therefore neglect to deal with the risks of our whole species being wiped out after decades of ecological neglect and out of control population growth, end-stage capitalism, and global warming. The African ethic of Ubuntu is a philosophy of respect, caring, helpfulness, community, trust, sharing, and generosity. The word Ubuntu is found in several Southern African languages, and it literally means humanness. To have Ubuntu is to be a person who is living a genuinely human way of life, whereas to lack Ubuntu is to be missing human excellence. People indigenous to Africa commonly believe that one's basic aim in life should be to exhibit Ubuntu, which is done by prizing communal relationships with other people. The aphorism, "A rising tide lifts all boats," has been used in recent years to highlight economic inequality. And most progressive economists and philosophers opine that in the absence of appropriate policies, the rising tide will lift some boats, but others will run aground. And British Labour MP Ed Miliband said, "They used to say rising tides lifted all boats. Now the rising tide just seems to lift the yachts." But economic theory aside, gratitude and reciprocity are the currency of a gift economy. And they have the remarkable property of multiplying with every exchange. Their energy concentrating as they pass from hand to hand. They're a truly renewable resource. Robin Wall Kimmerer, which I know many of you are familiar with, is a professor of environmental and forest biology at the State University of New York, College of Environmental Science and Forestry. She is an indigenous woman and a member of the Potawatomi Nation. She is best known for her award-winning book, Braiding Sweetgrass, where her poetic gift is using nature as metaphor to highlight what it means to be human. I'd like to include today a story about gifts from Professor Kimmerer in her own words. As I harvest service berries alongside the birds, I consider the ethic of reciprocity that lies at the heart of the gift economy. In Potawatomi, it is called bozekmin, which is a superlative, the best of the berries. She says, "I agree with my ancestors on the rightness of that name. For me, the most important part of the word bozekmin is min, the root word for berry. It appears in our Potawatomi words for blackberry, strawberry, raspberry, even apple, maize, and wild rice. The revelation in that word is a treasure for me because it's also the root word for gift. In the naming the plants who shower us with goodness, we recognize that these are gifts from our plant relatives, manifestations of their generosity, care, and creativity. When we speak of these not as things or products or commodities, but as gifts, the whole relationship changes. I can't help but gaze at them cupped like jewels in my hand and breathe out my gratitude. In the presence of such gifts, gratitude is the intuitive first response. The gratitude flows toward our plant elders and radiates to the rain, to the sunshine, to the improbability of bushes spangled with morsels of sweetness in a world that can be bitter. Gratitude is so much more than a polite thank you. It is the thread that connects us in deep relationship, simultaneously physical and spiritual, as our bodies are fed and our spirits nourished by the sense of belonging, which is the most vital of foods. Gratitude creates a sense of abundance, the knowing that you have what you need. In that climate of sufficiency, our hunger for more abates, and we take only what we need in respect for the generosity of the giver. If our first response is gratitude, then our second is reciprocity, to give a gift in return. What could I give these plants in return for their generosity? It could be a direct response like weeding or watering, or a song of thanks that sends appreciation out on the wind. Or indirect, like donating to my local land trust so that more habitat for the gift givers will be saved. Or making art that invites others into the web of reciprocity. To accept the gift from the bush and then spread that gift with a dish of berries to my neighbor, who then makes a pie to share with his friend, who feels so wealthy in food and friendship that he volunteers at the food pantry. You see how it goes? To name the world as gift is to feel one's membership in the web of reciprocity. It makes us happy, and it makes us accountable. Conceiving of something as a gift changes our relationship to it in a profound way, even though the physical makeup of the thing has not changed. An example, a woolly knit hat that you purchased at the store will keep you warm regardless of its origin. But if it was hand knit by your favorite auntie, then you are in relationship to that thing in a very different way. You are responsible for it, and your gratitude has motive force in the world. You're likely to take much better care of that gift hat than the commodity hat because it is knit of relationships. This is the power of gift thinking. I imagine if we acknowledge that everything we consume is the gift of Mother Earth, we would take much better care of what we are given. Mistreating a gift has emotional and ethical gravity, as well as ecological resonance. How we think ripples out into how we behave. If we view these berries or that coal or forest as an object, as property, it can be exploited as a commodity in a market economy. We know the consequences of that. Why then have we permitted the dominance of an economic system that commodifies everything, that creates scarcity instead of abundance, that promotes accumulation rather than sharing? We've surrendered our values to an economic system that actively harms what we love. I'm wondering how we fix that. Just how do we cultivate paradise? In a gift economy, wealth is understood as having enough to share, and the practice for dealing with abundance is to give it away. In fact, status is determined not by how much one accumulates, but by how much one gives away. The currency of a gift economy is relationship, which is expressed as gratitude, as interdependence, and the ongoing cycles of reciprocity. A gift economy nurtures the community bonds, which enhance mutual well-being. The economic unit is we rather than I, as all flourishing is mutual. Back in our hometown of Naples, New York, we have a local UU celebrity. Petra Page Mann and her partner Matthew Goldfarb began an amazing experiment in Naples almost 12 years ago by starting Fruition Seeds. They've been developing, growing, and distributing high-quality certified organic seed. Their project has been incredibly successful. And as of this past August, they made the decision to stop selling seeds and have begun an even more daring experiment, giving their seeds away as a gift. To continue their work, Fruition will now share their bounty with others in an energy exchange that calls on the community to contribute in whatever way they are called to do, helping with financial gifts, or helping with planting, harvesting, packaging, and then sharing in the incredible bounty that nature provides. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? Well, as we speak, they are building a community kitchen and bunkhouse for those who wish to come help. The hows and whys of this experiment are explained in detail if you'd like to go to their website, which is simply fruitionseeds.com. After reviewing this sermon for me, Petra suggested that I might like to end with a challenge for all of us, something to think about. So, what are the seeds of this gift culture already in your life? When do you give without expecting to receive right away or ever? We all do, even in little ways. There's a quiz I've been giving lately. The question is simple. What do we have that billionaires will never have? Enough. We have enough. Thank you. May it be so.